Stream more Cool House anytime you want on demand or scan the QR code on your screen now. I'm Celeste Rodriguez. Thanks for watching.
All right, here we go. Fox 10 Talk Sports pregame every Friday at 3:30 right here on the Fox 10 stream and Fox 10 Phoenix YouTube. Robby Baker in studio. Blake Niemann, as you can see, out on assignment today. Blake, where are we at here? Phoenix Muni, a little ASU baseball action.
Yeah, what up, guys? Fox 10 Talk Sports pregame on a Friday. Couldn't think of a better way to spend it in January on this beautiful day out here at Phoenix Municipal Stadium. ASU baseball team getting ready for the season opening day, less than a month away, pretty much a month away from today, as it'll be on February 13th, opening day against the University of Omaha, Nebraska. Should be exciting, especially with Willie Bloomquist just breaking this morning that he's going to sign another 2-year contract extension to stay at the helm of his alma mater here at ASU.
Yeah, just let's kind of start there. We still got to talk Cardinals coming up. They do not have a head coach still. Only one head coaching vacancy has been filled. John Harbaugh reportedly finalizing a deal to become the head coach of the New York Giants. So we'll break down who's been interviewing this week for the Cardinals head coach opening and some more transfer portal news for Arizona State. But we'll kick things off with baseball since that is where you are at, Blake. Were you surprised by the news today? I mean, we're not too far removed from maybe some talk of ASU wanting to potentially move on from Willie Bloomquist, but it feels like this program has gained some traction here the last couple years. The expanded scholarships, revenue sharing. ASU seems to be making the full court press push to get this baseball program back to the top of the mountain where it historically has been. The Reggie Jackson, Barry Bonds, Dustin Pedroias. This has been one of the premier baseball programs in all of America. Kind of fell off a little bit the last decade or so, but it feels like the school has obviously today the school has put full faith behind Willie, another contract extension to get this thing back to the top of the Big 12, the top of the NCAA baseball standings, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, Willie knows the standard. He knows the standard is Omaha. He knows that this program is built on Omaha. I mean, over my right shoulder, it always hangs over them. The amount of Omaha appearances they've had at the College World Series, the 5 national championships this program has had, even though they haven't had one since 1981. But Willie, I mean, he played in the College World Series under Pat Murphy. We've seen what Pat Murphy has gone on to do in the major leagues. He helped build up this program in the early 2000s and 2010s. Now it's a matter of Willie if he can get this program back to Omaha. Graham Rossini, a guy who has been a part of this baseball program before as a student, and now he's the AD of this entire athletic department, very connected to this program, and he knows what this program, the standard that has been set, the history that it has been, that has been established in it. It's MLBU. This program has produced more MLB players than any other program in the country. And so Willie Bloomquist knows the pipeline to get there, and I think he's the right guy for the job. He gets them back to the postseason last year. He has vested interest in this program. He has ties to it as a alumnus, and I think that is really what critical for this program, to have someone who has DNA within it and someone that truly takes pride in the Sun Devil spirit and the Sun Devil tradition.
And obviously a former Diamondback as well. So Willie, one of those players that came through the MLBU pipeline, if you will. I don't mean to put you on the spot, so apologies if you don't know the answer to this necessarily, Blake. But what is the kind of the vibe for the team this year? Because I know you look at the roster, there are some guys coming back that have been here the last couple of years. Some of the guys that were key contributors to that postseason run last year, and then obviously transfer portal, all that jazz. Do you have a sense of kind of the vibes of what the expectations are for this ASU baseball team?
Honestly, Robbie, I think there's a lot of unknown because last year, this past summer, ASU had 9 of its players picked in the MLB draft. Just going to be honest, but I mean, ASU having 9 players drafted in the MLB draft, I think that speaks to this program and getting guys to the next level. But it's also the contrast of yes, they want to move players onto the next level, but now they lost, a handful of juniors that they were maybe expecting to be back on the roster, end up getting picked by MLB teams and farm system. So there's a lot of positions in need. Isaiah Jackson has been their star center fielder for the past 3 years. He's no longer here. Kian Vu was top 5 in the country in batting average a couple of years ago, played in right field and left field a lot of the time. He's no longer here. ASU's, standout cementman at first base, Jacob Tobias, has been a staple for the past 5 years. He's no longer here. So there's a lot of positions to fill in ASU, trying to, get those areas of need, get those leaders. Really, the only guy that's been here for the longest now is New Contrades, who was out all of last year pretty much with a back injury, or in the year before a little bit as well. So he's going to have to take initiative of this group. Just going to be a lot of new faces that are going to have to rise to the occasion and try and take control of this team.
So it's transition a little bit here. We'll stick with ASU. We've got to give a shout out to Bobby Hurley and the men's basketball team, because over 20-point underdogs going down to Tucson, and they took the Arizona Wildcats basically down to the wire. That was a one-possession game with about a minute and change left. I don't think anybody saw that happening. So big shout out to Bobby Hurley and the men's basketball team for, we'll call it a moral victory, I suppose, for what happened in the first round of the rivalry showdown on the men's side of basketball. And then Molly Miller and the women's team looking to rebound tomorrow. Kansas coming to Desert Financial Arena. ASU women's team coming off I believe it was 31-point loss to TCU. But TCU, a very highly ranked team right now. So
TCU's tough, man. TCU's tough.
I think they're 12th in the country, I want to say, right now, or at the time when that loss happened. So we'll see if the women's basketball team can rebound tomorrow. Basketball pun intended. Let's talk quickly a little ASU football as well. This week a little bit more quiet on the transfer portal front. A lot of the big movers and shakers, happening in the first week of the portal. I believe today is the deadline for players to enter the portal. They don't have to decide where they're going, but I believe today or tomorrow is the deadline for entering the said portal. And a quarterback tangentially tied to ASU sphere. I don't know if you saw this, Blake, but in the last hour, Duke quarterback Darian Mensah actually just announced he was entering the transfer portal. So his last game at Duke will be beating the Sun Devils in the Sun Bowl. But a little bit more of a quiet week, I guess you could say, for the Sun Devils in the transfer portal. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because they've addressed a lot of areas of need. They did that early on when the portal opened.
Yeah, I mean, they added a few guys on defense, and the defensive line has been a big area of need to fill in that area. Losing Justin Watley, losing Jacob Kangaika, CJ Fight for them is fortunately coming back, but losing Clayton Smith on the edge, Prince Dorba, they're losing pretty much their entire defensive line. And then at linebacker, you lose Keyshawn Elliott and Jordan Crook. We talked about it a little bit before, but getting the NCAA's leading tackler from Colorado State. So they've added some key pieces on defense after they really, hit some hit some sparks and really got the fan base fired up with the offensive weapons they got in Omarion Miller and Reed Harris, the two star wide receivers, one from Boston College, the other from Colorado, and then also the quarterback and Cutter Boley. But I think adding the key glue pieces on defense is what's going to be critical, because this Sun Devil defense, as much as people haven't really talked about it, has been really the foundation and core of this team over the past couple of years.
Yeah, well, I'll throw a baseball pun since you're at baseball right now. It felt like the open of the portal was a couple home runs or grand slams, and then the last week, a couple singles, maybe a double in the right center. But that's not bad. That's effective. It moves the runners around.
Well, you need those. You need those.
It's productive productive movement around the base pass is what the Sun Devils have done in the transfer portal. I want to circle back because we weren't able to travel. Like a 9:00 tip off in Tucson. Just the logistics, it didn't work to travel to the U of A ASU game on Wednesday, the basketball game, but we both watched it very closely on television. How surprised were you? You actually had a chance. You talked to Bobby one-on-one earlier this week after practice. I think the day before they went down to Tucson. How surprised were you with the way this team competed against? I mean, it's one thing to say they're the number one team in the country, but they are. I mean, there's been times where it looks like this Arizona team could have beaten one of the worst NBA teams in like this year. I mean, they have just bulldozed people, and the Sun Devils, they went to every punch that U of A threw. The Sun Devils seemed to throw a counter.
Yeah, the Sun Devils really impressed me in that game against Arizona on Wednesday, I believe, and they really showed up in a way that I don't think a lot of Sun Devil fans even thought they were going to show up. They definitely impressed me, definitely shocked me. Even with talking with Bobby Hurley before the game, he did seem to have a sense of peace about him. It seems that even in this final year of his contract, he's just kind of come to peace with terms with his time at ASU. This group has been a lot better. We talked about it with him in terms of just coachability and ability to be coached. We saw that ASU had some disciplinary action issues last year with BJ Freeman, who ended up having some gambling issues that go into different paperwork. You can look it up online. But problem was there was a problem with locker room culture last year. That isn't an issue at all this year. With Mo Odom taking the charge, he was phenomenal in that second half against U of A, really put the team on his back. And to be able to compete, Bobby talked about it post-game, was like, to be able to compete against a team like that in U of A, if we can take just a small bit of what the kind of effort and kind of play style we showed tonight and do it in the rest of our 14 Big 12 league games, then we're going to have a chance to compete for possible NCAA postseason hope seasons.
Yeah, their non-conference, I mean, obviously they went on a pretty good run in the non-conference. The loss to Oregon State hurts. If they end up being a bubble team, that's going to be
Colorado
a loss.
Hurts.
Colorado hurts because that was at home, too. That felt like a game that was like, well, the Big 12 is a gauntlet. You got to win. You got to try to protect home court, and no offense to Colorado, but that's probably a game you got to get. So ASU has kind of put themselves in a very familiar place that they have been in the last probably 5 or 6 years under Bobby, where it's a solid non-conference slate, and you get to conference, and you're going to have to overachieve a little bit if you want to get ultimately in the NCAA tournament conversation. But if they, to your point, if they play like they did on Wednesday, there is a chance that they could knock a team or two off here and pull off some upsets. There is something to be said, I think, that the Big 12 is a ridiculous basket. It is probably, if not easily, the best basketball.
It's got to be
conference.
the best. I mean, you look at U of A, number one, Houston, number 7. I believe Texas Tech, I think, is in the top 10 now.
Texas Tech definitely up there.
Loaded, like
Baylor's got that former
BYU.
NBA. BYU. Well, BYU, yep. Former Suns coach Kevin Young. Baylor's got that transfer. I think he's playing now, from the G League, that weird loophole they found.
There's no easy game in the Big 12.
No, and if ASU shows up like they did Wednesday for here out the rest of the season, there will be a game or two that they will probably pick off. There will be an upset, whether it is, we've seen them go to Kansas and beat Kansas before, whether it's any of these teams may come in and see, wow, it's ASU, these are just college kids. Maybe they, read some of the press clippings. Maybe Bobby Hurley's team can pick off an upset or two. Quick, give me like 20 seconds before we hit the break here. We were at women's basketball practice yesterday. I know you were talking with McKenna Brackens. This Sun Devil women's team looking for a rebound performance, and I'll never count out Molly Miller. Kansas is very good. Their start to conference play has not been great, but I think we both probably are confident in the Sun Devils getting a win tomorrow. Give me like 20 seconds what you think about that Kansas ASU women's game.
Yeah, more so just with talking with McKenna Brackens, she talked about when she first came here that Molly talked about, the belief in this program. And I think the rest of the players have bought into what she's building here. There's a true belief in that this team can be special. They've shown it so far through the non-conference. How can they continue to translate it to Big 12 play?
Yep, the Big 12 is also a gauntlet on the women's side as well, but when you go 15-0, I think it was, in the non-conference, ASU women's did, you put yourself in some pretty good position when it comes to the NCAA tournament possibilities and some margin for error when you get to conference play. So we'll hit the break here real quick. We'll come back and we'll go through the 400. We are back here, Fox 10 Talk Sports pregame. Blake Niemann out on location, on assignment today. Are they still practicing? The 3 o'clock end of practice has become almost 4 o'clock for ASU baseball?
No, they're wrapped up now. Got a few players talking to the media. We got Brad
Nice.
Gass, Megan Plain down there.
Oh, the
Tune
1-2
in
punch.
at the regular Fox 10 news time at 5:50 for the Sportscast, 5 o'clock.
There you go. Tune in at 5. Tune in at 5. Watch the whole
news.
thing.
Come
Why
on,
don't
just
you?
tune in. Just tune
Yeah,
in to Fox
let's
10.
have some
Come
fun.
on. Yeah,
John Hook.
You'll hear from
Ellen,
Willie then.
the whole gang.
It'll be great.
Let's talk Cardinals head coaching opening. They are obviously still looking for a head coach. The New York Football Giants are the only team that has reportedly found their new head coach. John Harbaugh, earlier this week it was reported, agreed to a 5-year deal to become the New York Giants head football coach, but that has not been officially released yet. Just bear with me here. I'll have to check my phone as I go through the list of candidates that have reportedly at various days interviewed with the Arizona Cardinals. Today, reportedly, Los Angeles Rams offensive coordinator Mike LaFleur, not Matt LaFleur, Mike LaFleur, has interviewed, according to reports today. Yesterday night, multiple outlets reported that San Francisco 49ers defensive coordinator Robert Saleh was in town for an interview. Let's see. The day before that, Green Bay Packers DC, Jeff Hafley was in town for an interview, January 13th. Chargers defensive coordinator Jesse Minter was in town for an interview January 12th. Former Falcons head coach Raheem Morris interviewed for the head coaching opening January 10th. Seattle Seahawks offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak reportedly interviewed. The day before that, Kansas City Chiefs offensive coordinator Matt Nagy reportedly interviewed for the head coaching opening. Vance Joseph was one of the first reported interviews for the head coaching vacancy. And if that was not enough for you, the Cardinals have also reportedly put in interview requests for Pittsburgh Steelers OC Arthur Smith, Texans defensive coordinator Matt Burke, and Rams defensive coordinator Chris Shula, among others. So one name not on that list would be Mike McDaniel, the former Dolphins head coach that we talked about last week. We both thought would be a fun fit here. He is not on that list. I apologize, Blake, if you have already forgot half the names I just read, because I just threw a lot at you. Also, if you're watching in the chat, if you're watching on YouTube right now, let us know in the chat how you feel about the Cardinals coaching search right now. I say in jest that they have interviewed a bunch of people, and they have. And that's not abnormal when you go through a cycle like this. Fans will remember a few years ago, the Cardinals went through all of this, and then basically at the 11th hour, it was Jonathan Gannon. They had him literally in town when they lost the Super Bowl. Interviews, boom, he's announced the next week as the head coach. So this is not an abnormal process. I don't mean to cast it any other way, but there is a lot of names out there right now. I guess Robert Saleh is probably... I mean, he's the name. They got him in town for an interview. I said lock the doors, don't let him leave until he signs a contract. But it does appear as if he's left Arizona without taking the job at this moment. But Robert Saleh is probably, he's got to be the marquee name of that list I read, right?
I'd go for Robert Saleh. I mean, the fact that they were able to get an interview with him is impressive to me. I mean, I think people get a bad rap for him because of what happened with the Jets when he was the Jets head coach a few years back. But, I mean, I feel like anyone who really goes to the Jets, no shade if you're a Jets fan, like it doesn't really work out, like in any circumstance. I mean, look at Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold gets drafted by the Jets.
He was seeing ghosts.
Like everyone thinks he's the terrible NFL quarterback. Now he comes to the Seahawks and the Vikings, and he's on two of the best NFL teams, two 14-win NFL teams each of the past 2 seasons. So it's like, and then you look at Dante Moore coming back to college to Oregon. He's probably going to end up with the Jets.
And he's like, actually going back to Oregon sounds a little bit more fun.
Jets. So I feel like Jets, there's really no possible situation to where you can succeed. It's just I'm sorry, but it's just like kind of a failing, dysfunctional organization. So now he goes to a functional organization like the San Francisco 49ers, is their DC, really brings that defense to life, especially even losing some of their star pieces like, Bosa and Fred Warner, who actually might be back for the playoffs. But then you bring that kind of energy from someone in your conference and add that to helm your organization. I think it's a no-brainer, and now it's just a matter of Saleh actually wants to be the head coach of the Cardinals.
You bring up the Jets is an interesting, point. I agree with everything you said, and it leads me into kind of my next thought process with this is when you look at, I believe there are 8 coaching openings, 8 or 9 right now. There are a lot of opportunities for people to become an NFL head coach right now. Blake, you and neither you nor I have been, no interview requests have come in for us, so I'm a little upset. It would have been nice to at least been considered, but no, we are not qualified to be head coach of the Cardinals. But the point I'm getting to. No, we can just have some fun with it. We've played Madden, I could, get on the sticks, But the point I'm making is when you look at the... you did play high school football. That's right. You played every sport in high school, though, right?
I did.
Wrestling was your jam,
I played
though.
football. I wrestled, played baseball, did a little bit of everything.
I played ice hockey, and I was like the kid in Mighty Ducks and just went head first into the boards because I couldn't stop. So my brain will thank me someday down the road. But I digress. The point I was trying to make before... was the head coaching openings. You have your blue chips. It looks like the Giants are going to be off the board, and then Baltimore and Pittsburgh are probably the marquee. Well, those are the marquee openings right now. And then the Dolphins, you're going to have to inherit Tua and figure that situation out, but that is probably still viewed as a good job. If you are a Robert Saleh, if you are one of the most sought-after head coaching candidates right now, where do the Cardinals rank? Because I would argue... Okay, the Raiders are looking for a head coach, and that organization has been a mess for the last 5 or 6 years. They will get the number one. They do have the number 1 overall pick, and presumably they will have their franchise quarterback in Fernando Mendoza. So that probably puts them ahead of the Cardinals in that regard, because the Cardinals still need to figure out their quarterback situation. But I'm not sure. I mean, people talk about the Falcons that they're a marquee job opening, but I don't is Michael Penix their quarterback? There are a lot of question marks to me on they have Bijan Robinson, but beyond that, their defense is you could put the Cardinals defensive players to me up against, if they're healthy, against the Falcons. And the Browns are the Browns are the Browns, the Jets are the Jets, so the Jets aren't open right now. Sorry, Aaron Glenn is still their head coach, but give it a year, there'll be an opening there too, probably. But But where do you think the Cardinals are not the Steelers or the Ravens, but when you stack them up against some of the other openings right now, it's not. I mean, there are pieces here. Am I crazy?
I'd say the Cardinals rank 4th on my list if I was Robert Saleh.
The Blake Niemann power rankings.
In my opinion, I'd put Baltimore number 1 on the list because you got Lamar Jackson, 2-time MVP. Like, you can't deny that. And then you got Derrick Henry, one of the best running backs in NFL history at this point. I would then go for Pittsburgh after that, even though there might be some questions about the situation there. I think just the culture, the history, the investment from the community, and the rally around football tradition there. Then I would go with Miami, just because I think that can be a quick turnaround if you get the right situation. They have some bright pieces there, and they have a thing to where I feel like they can turn things around quickly and get that spark going. And Saleh, I think, could be the guy for that fit. And then I would go with the Cardinals after that. So I would go Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Miami, then Arizona.
Okay, that's about fair. So you don't think having the number 1 overall pick with the Raiders, that doesn't jump the Cardinals? Because the Raiders, in your mind, the Raiders have more question marks than the Cardinals, total roster-wise.
I think so. Because, I mean, if you look at the Cardinals, like, you have the best tight end in the league. You have a really promising couple of receivers in Michael Wilson and Marvin Harrison Jr.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look on the defense. There's some pieces there to work with Josh Sweat, Walter Nolan when he's healthy. Buda's still there. I feel like there's just a lot more solidified, like, in terms of, like, players across the board. I just think the coaching wasn't there this year.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think that's fair. I would like to see, we've talked about this last Friday. Usually when these big sweeping changes happen, the pendulum swings. It was Cliff Kingsbury, it was offense, then they swing the other way, and then it was Jonathan Gannon and the emphasis on defense and building up that side of the ball. And then they did that, and then the pendulum will swing the other way, and they'll hire an offensive. I would like to see the pendulum swing a little bit onto the offensive side of things, strictly because what you said right there, the defense, we kind of know what it is. And not in a good or bad way, but the players are there, and we've kind of seen what that unit looks like when it's coached up and healthy and playing at a high level. They need somebody, it feels like, to unlock the offense, and that's not even we don't have any idea what's going to happen with Kyler Murray, but the pieces, they need somebody to come in that can get Trey McBride, Michael Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr., and James Conner rolling. Because the pieces are there, it feels like, on offense. And for Marvin Harrison specifically, year 3, this has got to be the year for him to pop. And obviously he dealt with injuries last year, but if you're going to be a 4th overall pick and heralded like he was, and he had every right to be coming out of college, this has got to be the year for him where he kind of makes good on that. And the other part of that is, if there's any point in that upcoming year where he doesn't feel like he's the guy, like the true number 1, I should say, Michael Wilson had 1,000 yards in like 6 weeks at the end of the season. So, like, maybe Michael Wilson's the guy. So it just seems like they need to. I wouldn't be opposed to the pendulum swinging to the offensive side of things, because it feels like that area has more question marks in terms of scheming it up, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you need an offensive mind, but I also think you just need the right head coach, whoever that is, offense or defense. And I think Robert Saleh, just in terms of a guy who can really establish a culture, reignite a culture quickly. Just, you can see the way that players love him and rally around him as their DC. I mean, Fred Warner comes up and bear hugs him while he's injured. Like, you can just see the care that the players in San Francisco have for him. And I think that was a lot of why it was hard when JG left. A lot of the players genuinely loved JG.
Yeah.
He was really liked in that locker room, and I feel like they still felt he was like the guy. I just don't know if the staff, if JG necessarily surrounded himself with the best staff to succeed in terms of assistance. So I would be curious how Saleh would do in that regard in terms of getting a staff to build around him.
Yeah, it's also, I think we talked about this last Friday too. In my opinion, it would be good for the Cardinals to get somebody who has had head coaching experience, because the last number of hires they have made, the Cardinals was their first head coaching opportunity. So I think if you're talking about turnaround, culture building, somebody that has had the opportunity to have had an attempt at it once, you learn from your failures, and then you can hopefully succeed here with the Cardinals. It's also worth noting, according to reports today, one Jonathan Gannon this weekend is interviewing with the Tennessee Titans for their head coaching opportunity. I don't know if you saw that today, but that was quite
I think he has a shot,
twist and turn.
honestly. I think he has a shot to get that job.
You don't think and maybe this is just the cynic in me. We only got a minute left, but the Titans came to State Farm Stadium and came back. They basically ended the card. They basically got Jonathan Gannon fired week 4 of the season, and someone in that front office was like, "We should bring that guy in."
Still, I think a lot of people put a lot of unnecessary blame on JG. Now,
No, it's
yes,
fair. It's
everything
fair.
kind
It's
of
fair.
circles back to the head coach, but I think JG, like genuinely from hearing him in press conferences and to seeing him interact with players in practice and in games, like he seems like a guy who can build a culture. Like I genuinely think he's a head coach in the NFL.
No, that's fair. I was being sarcastic. It was just ironic that the Titans were the team that kind of really started